everybody, while we are waiting for more to come, for those who are attending, please get your phone ready. I need your phone to help me to do something interesting. Yes, and make sure that you know how to turn on to scan the QR code. I need you to know this skill to be interactive for our session. We will wait for maybe another 2-3 minutes. Okay, let's start because I'm still seeing a lot of people coming in. Thank you for coming once again. This time we have even more registrations as of now. I guess we have over 180 registrations for this part of the seminar webinar. So it means that this part will be a very informative, insightful, and I hope to make it interactive too. And as I said, this part is the part 2. If you have joined us for last week, that was part 1. We were talking about decisions. We were comparing decisions between jurisdictions. And it was, I would say it was quite a successful talk. And if you want to watch it again, it's on our YouTube channel. And actually, you can also see that on our website. But now I would like to introduce you to the part 2. And for today's session, we also have 1.5 hours. And then we would try to spend maybe an hour or so for the sharing, and then we'll try to leave the last 20 or 30 minutes for questions. This is all about psychological impact of relationship breakdown on the children. Before that, can we share screen? I would now like to share the screen. Before I introduce my speakers, I would like to just share the objectives of today. Okay, I'm not going to read all. Perhaps I give you 30 seconds to have a look of these questions. These are what we will be talking about today. You have 10 more seconds. Okay, so more or less you know what it is about today. So now let me introduce our speakers. We have 2 speakers for today. On my right is Laura, Miss Laura Lee. Let me introduce Laura. She is a psychologist specializing in developmental psychology and play therapy. She works in both school settings and private practice. Her area of expertise lies in working with children, particularly those affected by divorce or who are on the autism spectrum. Additionally, Laura also collaborates with parents, acting as either a parental coordinator or as a coach. Her aim is to guide both fathers and mothers through the tumultuous process of a breakup or divorce and beyond. This enables parents to prioritize the well-being of their children during these challenging times. She offers strategies to empower parents, helping them to maintain calm, communicate effectively, and progress towards healing and recovery. She was a custody evaluator and is no longer taking on cases for this cat. And on the screen, we have Miss Robin Howarth from Australia. Robin graduated from the University of Queensland, Australia in 1978 with a Bachelor of Social Work majoring in child psychology and relationship psychology. She subsequently did a graduate diploma in family therapy and a graduate diploma in family dispute resolution. Robin worked as a senior court conciliator in the Family Court of Australia for 5 years, doing court reports and family conciliation prior to training as a family mediator in the US in 1987. Robin moved to Hong Kong that same year. Robin now has a private mediation practice on the Gold Coast, Australia. Robin is also a co-director of the Global Mediation Institute Hong Kong and Global Training and Professional Development Limited Australia. Recently set up to ensure international mediator standards through masterclass training, supervision, and continuing professional development of mediators and family mediators in Hong Kong, Australia, and throughout the Asian and Pacific region. Robin has conducted over 4,000 mediations and specializes in high conflict divorce matters, international relocation cases, and cross-cultural disputes. So, I think you all know how impressive our speakers are today. And without further ado, but before I allow them to speak, I want you guys all to take out your phone. Okay, please scan it now before it disappears. Don't move. Okay.
Head down.
Is it okay?
Please.
Anyone has any issue? QR code.
Coming up.
Okay. Only a few. Jeremy Chan is always the genius. Come on. Anyone needs any help? Jennifer? 唔識，唔該。好，完全唔識 ，no problem.
Oh, Natalie is there.
I give you. It's all Jeremy Chan. Okay, I'm not going to wait now. Okay, please go to the first question. Okay, do current family law services institutes discriminate against or support dads? You only have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You just press. Okay, we have 9 say yes, 2 no, 2 unsure. So you only have 10 seconds to answer the questions. And there is no right or wrong answer because we don't have enough time. Number 2, is professional practice within family law services gendered?
That means are there more women working in family law practices than men?
Time's up. Okay, 18 said gendered. Okay, next. 10 seconds. Focus. Do men feel comfortable to access service for help post-separation? 5 seconds left. Time's up. Oh, no. Do men feel comfortable? Okay, so we have to address their feeling now. 4. Are we mindful of using dad-friendly co-parental language in our work? 5 seconds. Let's see. Oh, we are mindful. 19. Okay, next. Do we see dads as individuals, each with unique experiences of being dads? Just answer. 1 second. Time's up. Wow. Okay.
Pretty good job.
6. Are we aware of community resources, ways for dads to be involved with their children? 5 seconds left. You won't have a lot of questions, no worry. Okay, let's see. No. Okay. 7. Are we promoting the positive aspects of dads being involved with their children post-separation? Are we?
As
Whatever, just
helping profession.
15 say yes. I would like to see who are the 7. Maybe the Hong Kong as the one of that 7. Okay. 8. Are we aware of the risk for children when relationships with their dads are not encouraged post-separation? Wow, amazing. Okay, very good. 26. And then you have 2 more questions. What is the appropriate age that you think a father can have staying access to their children during relationship breakdown? That would be interesting. Very good. Amazing. No, okay, last one. Do you agree that equal split of children's time during relationship breakdown should be the starting point? Okay. Okay, so you see how you feel. Well, while you are trying to analyze this number, I can tell you the audience, I've seen quite a number from Australia. There are also fathers themselves, or there are social workers both in Hong Kong and Australia, and also mediators and some psychologists here as well. So this might have an impact of all these answers, but doesn't matter. And as I said, there is no right or wrong answers in those questions. This is just for us to think where we stand at the moment. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Laura, who will firstly try to explain to us the developmental, what is it? Let me see. The developmental need at various stages of the children. So let me pass it through. Laura.
Okay. There are many theories and framework to talk about child development, but mainly we do categorize in different age group. And you can see that the developmental will. But I would like to talk about this different way to look at child development. Attachment would be the main thing, but when we're looking at child development, when we're looking at, I'm talking about using the head off as a custody evaluator, or when I'm working as a treating psychologist, I always look at the children don't grow up in isolation. I look at the environment. Yes. Oh.
I am partially deaf.
I'll try to speak up louder. Okay.
That'd be great, thanks.
So, hello?
Yeah,
Can you hear me better?
just try closer.
Hello?
Yeah,
Is it better? No.
maybe take it off. Hello, hello.
Okay. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at it through the lens of a custody evaluator as well as a treating psychologist. So when I look at children development, or when the children present any issue, I look at different angle. Stages is one, but I also look at the environment where the children growing up with, the immediate circle and also the surrounding circle. As some of you know that I am from the Anna Freud Center, so a big part of it will be very Freudian. I'm not talking about the psychosexual stages, but some of you might be familiar with the ego, superego, which basically it's when the child is growing up, we say that it's like the wild horse. They have a lot of instinctual behavior, instinctual need. What parent and or carer around them serve is what we call the ego. As the child develops, we need to tell the child what the reality of their surrounding, what is right, what is wrong, and also the moral development as well. So their immediate surrounding, all these people help the child to develop. The ideal situation is we still let the child grow to be who he or she is. But at the same time, we set the perimeter so that the child grow up in a safe environment, knowing what is safe, what is sociable. We want the children to have friends. We don't want the child that go like wild biting people, because that's not helpful. We want the child to have the freedom to learn self-restraint, but without too much restraint. And we also look at development. And you look at the development as different stages. We do believe that different stages, as we grow, is actually accomplish certain part of it. And when the younger they are, they develop a lot of trust issues. And you can go back to look at it, it's like, wow, where did they can develop trust later on in life? Actually, you go back to much earlier on stages. And as you know that even as our age, we still have developmental stages that we have to go through even at our age, while they're being generous to giving out and sharing, or I'm being very stingy and not sharing my knowledge. And obviously, if we are working toward growth, at our age, maybe generously sharing our knowledge, sharing our expertise would be one that help us to grow, and also that it just make us feeling rather than stuck. And I was like, I'm not growing anymore, but I'm actually exchanging information. So at each stage, children and adults, we are still growing. And that go with parents as well. One of my little book that I really like is this book. They have different stages. And then you can see that each one, the terrible two, but then 3 and 4, they have friends or enemy. They develop character, children. But what I like the most is that they talk about children development is not linear. There's a lot of back and forth going on. Sometimes maybe as a 2 years old, I'm a terrible 2, but then I also have my fun part. As a parent, like my son is now a young adult, he's too busy with his girlfriend, but I remember all this year going through, there's time that I was like, oh my God, it's so difficult. I just want to send him to the boarding school. But then 6 months later, it's like he's much more pleasant. And now he's much more present most of the time. But I want to see that like children development is a lot of back and forth. It's not like a linear. They overcome one thing, they learn one thing. A lot of time they go backwards. And this is just, I'm talking about normal child development, not when a child is under a lot of stress, either because they're moving or because the parents are going through divorce.
And Robin, I've seen you've also put together the guidelines. Anything that you want to add?
I just want to mention that these are guidelines to complement what Laura is talking about, but these are specific guidelines that have been developed for children post-separation. And these are really helpful guidelines when people are coming to mediation or going to a therapist or to a parental coordinator or someone who is there to really assist them to work out some appropriate care arrangements for the children post-separation. So couple of the things I really like about these guidelines is that they talk about the normal characteristics that a child at certain age groups would exhibit. And most parents will say, yes, that sounds like my child. Yes, they're doing this or they're not doing this. It also talks about behavioural reactions at different ages and stages to separation and divorce of their parents and what is normal. So it's really helpful for parents to understand that those behaviours that they may be exhibiting are quite normal given the fact that they're a certain age group. It also outlines the risks for children at different age groups. And these are things that I think as professionals we really need to be aware of. That if parents are saying my child actually is exhibiting some of those risks, then we need to look at what is going on in the environment that's not working for those children. Is it the care arrangement that they're currently living with and it's not working for them? Is it high levels of conflict between mum and dad and that's not working for them? But it alerts professionals to the fact that these children are not coping and that they're at risk, particularly if those characteristics continue. It also then looks at children's needs. So what do children at different ages and stages actually need post-separation? And then it looks at some typical kind of care arrangements. So it's guidelines only. And this and the next slide, which I won't go in detail with, but it just helps professionals to understand that there is a lot of research now around children post-separation and what actually works for children and doesn't work for children. So it's evidence-based and we're informed by this research. So can I just say 2 more things, Rita?
Yeah.
A couple of things that you need to be aware of, though. If you're looking at these slides later, I want you to be aware that when we're looking at these care arrangements, we need to look at the previous caretaking history. So those attachments that Laura is talking about are really important. Who's been involved? Mum and dad, or just mum, or just dad? So we need to be looking at, or the domestic helper if you're in Hong Kong, we need to be looking at the attachments. We also need to look at the child's personality, because some children are very resilient and very flexible and adaptable. Other children are very timid. and quite anxious. So we need to take that into account as well. And we always need to remember safety. That yes, we need to do these arrangements in children's best interest, but we need to look at two things. Is it safe for the child? And secondly, is it reasonably practicable? You know, can you actually put these arrangements into place? Or are parents living too far apart? Is the conflict too high? Is there a reason why these arrangements that research is telling us should work for children perhaps won't work? So each family, each situation is unique, and we need to be taking into account all of those factors and then using some of these guidelines to help. And this is just one set of guidelines. Many of the family courts in America produce their own sets of guidelines. So if you're interested in other guidelines, just go on the web and research family courts, and there will be lots of different guidelines. They all say the same because they're all based on research, but they say them in different ways. So it's just a really important tool, I think, for us as professionals when decisions are being made by parents in mediation about children's care arrangements, and then for those who are doing custody evaluations in Hong Kong and court reports in Australia, that they take into account some of the research.
And you just use the word attachment. And in litigation, especially when there are very young children involved, like infant, 1-2 years old, one party used to use attachment as a reason to obstruct the other parent for a reasonable time. How do you feel about that? I know Laura will be going into attachment. So Laura?
Children need to have time in order to build attachment. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Time is one thing, and also proximity. You can't build attachment online. It's actually really hard. You need to have the face-to-face interaction. There's a lot of back and forth. It takes time to build attachment. And at different stage, as you can see the presentation later, they need the parent to be responsive. As long as the parent can be responsive, like mentally available, and then given the time, without the time, they cannot build attachment. Maybe some of the parents, they previously did not have the time for whatever reason, but if we are continually saying that, nope, you're not allowed to have any time, it is very hard to build attachment. It's very hard to build attachment in a supervised visit.
But when the mother is saying that because, well, for all sorts of reasons, the very young child has to be attached to me, they will be super insecure if they have to stay away from me. And that's the reason that they can't build another side of attachment. So
all the research actually show that children can have multiple attachment figure, and actually they can have different attachment pattern as well. Maybe they have a very secure attachment pattern with one parent, but an insecure or avoidant attachment figure with another.
So maybe you need to go through that cycle.
So in order to build attachment, it's not a one-off thing, just like development. It's very much like a dance between a child, it could be a baby and a parent, or a child to a parent. It changes over time as well. But a lot of the time is what the child showing temperament and need. How responsive is the parent? It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually have to be the parent. A lot of the child in Hong Kong especially have a very strong attachment bond with their grandparent or domestic helper, because children can, especially later on, we talk about that, at student stage is indiscriminate. They can have, it doesn't matter for them is whether you are the biological parent or a domestic helper. But if that person can be consistently providing the care that met the need of the child will build attachment with that person. And this is like a lot of back and forth. The better the parent or the carer able to respond to the child's need, the better, the more secure the attachment will be. And you can see that at different stages, when they're younger, like baby stage, actually they're indiscriminate. The person that is holding the baby, the person that is responding to the baby cry, the need, changing nappy, feeding and all, would be the one that building a stronger attachment with that person. And then the real attachment begin when the baby getting older or start looking around. They start to notice the sound, the smell, and all this. This is a different person. They will start to have preference. They will have preference for the person that I feel safe, that I feel cared for, rather than if I have very chaotic attachment, that means this person sometimes provide the care for me, but sometimes not. That the infant or the young child would choose the one that have a kind of more secure attachment figure. I would like to go to that person more. But at the same time, that build a stronger bond between the child with that carer. They will try to avoid, or they will feel like kind of like have this ambivalent attachment with the carer that are not able to provide a secure and consistent need that respond to the child need. And then that would be stage 2 and 3. They kind of choose what they want. But stage 4 is the child become like, I'm aware that I can have multiple attachment figure. It could be the teacher, it could be a music teacher, it could be my coach, it could be my Boy Scout leader, because different people provide different need for the child.
What age is under stage 4?
I would say about 6 or 7, because your prefrontal cortex developed by the time it's back to front. So we'll talk a little bit of cognitive development, is that your thinking brain, your analyze brain start to develop more when you're 6 years old. So that would be the time they start to realize, like, yeah, this person usually gives me sweet, this person will punish me if I do the wrong thing. They will start to look at the consequences, the cause and effect. So by 6 years old, they start to able to have multiple attachment in their life. And I want to talk about, when we talk about young people, there's a really, probably would not be allowed in this stage. The 1959 was still allowed. The young monkey was removed from the mother. And I'm not so sure how many of you are familiar with this study. So the baby infant monkey was placed in a cage. So there were 2 monkey. One was just wire with the milk bottle. So that will provide the feeding. However, the research actually showed that the monkey preferred the one that with the cloth monkey, because that gives the comfort, the warmth that the monkey actually need is the comfort, the feeling of touching, rather than just the milk that is nourishment that is needed. So a lot of time is when we're thinking about feeding, does baby just need feeding, or does it need the comfort? A lot of time is hand holding, the touch of that as well. So that brings me to the point of, yes, feeding is very important for baby, but the touch and then because we were talking about even when the baby was in the mom's during pregnancy, they start to recognize voices and all of this. And when they're older, when they're infant stage, their senses are very strong. So they can actually differentiate people by the smell and the touch. So those are the time that we will build the bond as well. So young infant, they actually can build very strong attachment with the carer or the father when you are consistently touching, holding the baby, changing the nappy, providing the need. So we are talking about the 4 different kind of attachment style. The secure one, that is the one that consistently provide, yes, I have a wet nappy, I cry, and you will come to change my nappy. I'm hungry, I cry. You actually can differentiate the cry as well. Sometimes I cry because I want to be hugged. Sometimes I cry because I'm hungry. Sometimes I cry because I need to change up nappy. Sometimes I cry, I just want to move around. The more that the carer is able to respond to the need, the more secure the attachment will be. But that changed as the child get older. You have different needs. When you're 2 years old, your need would be very different. That would also including when you're starting from 2-ish, you're starting to the need of boundary and expectation. What is my boundary? A child that without boundary, clear expectation and understanding of why am I not allowed to draw on the wall on Monday, but not on Tuesday? So that person will not give the child the safety of, I have the consistent expectation. I know mom would not want me to draw on the wall. I'll get in trouble every time. Versus another mom is yeah, you can draw on the wall, but maybe not green. I don't like green. So that becomes difficult for the child. Then the security attachment would be well, maybe it's not so secure because I don't know my expectation is. When would I get in trouble? Seems like mom is in a good mood, then I won't get in trouble. But when mom is in a bad mood, I get in trouble more. So that would cause the insecure attachment more. And the worst one is the fearful and avoidant one. When one parent, it could be because the parents are mentally not available, or they are very chaotic. Their mood is very dysregulated. Then the child become very fearful of like, oh, I'm not so sure how mom mood is. So we develop when we are older, you can see that it's like we show different kind of attachment pattern in our relationship with people. And sometimes we show very secure. I feel confident. And you see that a lot actually when I'm doing observation, when I'm doing custody evaluation. A lot of the time when I get the moment to observe the attachment moment is when the child venture out to play, how they react with the parent. Do they look back at the parent and it's like, yep, the parent give them the look of okay, and then they will go on. But some, I just don't look, I just do it. But then later on, we see that some children are not so lucky. They have a lot of doubt. They're very anxious when they're in new situations, or they are very anxious of how my parent will respond. So that we can see that their attachment is not as healthy. And the most unhealthy one is the fearful one, that they are constantly watching out. It's like, am I doing the right thing? The thing is, children want to be loved, especially by their parent or attachment figure. Am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? I always look over my shoulder. Am I saying the right thing that might upset mom? Am I saying the right thing that I might upset my grandparent? Because they are fearful. If I say the wrong thing, my attachment figure will not love me anymore. So those are the fearful attachment pattern that we are seeing. And those are the one that we need to watch out. It's like, okay, the child automatically want to attach, but their pattern is one that's showing me that this is not a very healthy attachment. And that later on will affect how they relate with their partner and their work environment as well.
And we've sometimes used, but actually not sometimes, always used the word loyalty conflict. Do you think at what age the children could feel that and react to that? Especially, well, I'm talking about in a divorce situation.
I think from, like I said, by the age of 6, they can definitely see, but actually much younger. They might not have the language start around 2 and 3. They have clear language and understanding. But there's a very famous study that they call they make the baby walk on a glass wall, and then the mother was on the other side. I'm talking about an 18-month baby. So the baby will claw to the mother. If the mother actually, there is research is showing that when the mother show that I'm confident you can do it, the baby will do it. And I'm talking about 18-month-old baby. When the mother show like, I'm really scared, like don't do it, the baby won't. So as young as 18 months, they notice if you don't want me to see this person, if you don't feel safe with this person, the baby or the younger they are, the more fearful they will be to go to the other person.
That's interesting. Are we going too far?
And the attachment dance. The child, the temperament, who they are, influence this attachment dance. But the parent, we all carry a lot of baggage as parents. How we were parents, or in the case of divorce, how the divorce is affecting that person as a you will affect how the parent able to react to the child needs. And in turn, if the child feel like you are not going to meet my need, I'm either going to withdraw or I'm going to make it louder so that you can hear me, so that you will give me the need. But then if I try and you're not able to give, the child will start to withdraw. So this is a dance between the parent and child. And the child would have different dance with different carer. And just like learning, progress is not linear. But like parenting is not linear as well. At times when we are going through a lot in our life, maybe work, maybe divorce, sometimes we are not the best parent we can. Sometimes we just find it really difficult. We just don't have the mental capacity. We go backward. We are not as receptive. We're not as caring because we don't have enough like oil in our tank to give. So sometimes we need to go back. When we're going backward, those are the time that parent will need the support. And I always say that parenting is like a little bit of back and forth. It's not just yin and yang. We both have both. We both have yin, both have yang. Sometimes I think it's very important to know which one are you more. And I think that's the reason children need both parents is there's not one parent that can provide everything for children. Children need both. Children need a lot of like rough and tumble play, but they also need the nurturing play. And I'm not saying that mother will be the one that not able to provide rough and tumble. And I'm not saying that father cannot provide nurturing plays, because just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I cannot be rough and tumble. Just because I'm a father doesn't mean that I cannot be nurturing. So the most important thing is, before the age of 5, 90% of your brain are developed. And this is the unconscious development as well. So if we look at child development in, Daniel Seeger said very clearly, with our brain developed in a bottom to top, back to front manner. So a lot of it, as I say, that this is around when you're 6 years old, your cognitive brain starts to develop. So before that, actually, a lot of the time is unconscious. That means that your body carries the memory and the feelings, and those are actually very hard to change later on in life. So the attachment, and also I remember when I was doing my first master, we all say that if we're going to adopt a child, try to adopt a child before the age of 6, because there's so much you can do to help the child to change. A lot of it is after the age of 6, it's much harder to change. So that's a big part of it, is why actually the younger they are, the more important to have both parents in their life. So we're talking about how infants, I'm very out of time. Infant, despite the fact that they sleep 14 to 17 hours a day, and then they need to feed every 2 to 3 hours. And a lot of time people say that at this age, children should stay with the mother, they don't need their father. But if we remember from the attachment point of view, all this touching, all this holding, all this changing nappy, actually they all contribute to the attachment building, especially in the stage that is indiscriminate. The child will build attachment to whoever that look after to that person, and also to build a sense of safety that I am loved, I can trust the people around me. So now you can see birth to 6-week pre-attachment. So a lot of this by touch, and the pre-attachment stages actually set you for life. It's like how I feel safe or unsafe about the environment and the world around me. And 6 to 8 weeks, and there's a lot more dance going on. I cool, how you respond to me, how I cry, you respond to me. And then you can see 6 months onward, the clear cut, I choose someone. You can see a child cling to certain people now. And then 24 months onward, it's more goal related. I direct this. And then in order to build attachment, you need proximity, you need the sameness, the routines, like how you related to the child, and a sense of belonging. The child feel like, yes, in a way, I own you, and you, like, we are really together. And then the significant, the older they are, they need to worship the parent. They do worship their parents until they're a teenager, obviously. And around the age of 5, they are a lot more complex now, as you can see. Like, yes, I love you, but sometimes I hate you because you say no to me. And that is normal. And as a parent, as a good parent, we have to able to bear the, yes, sometimes I know, sometimes you hate me, sometimes you're angry with me. But that's what a good parent is to allow this to happen, allow the child to hate me when I'm not doing everything that you want, because I won't allow you to bite, I won't allow you to paint the wall, because if I do that, I'm not helping you to be a good, like, to be able to sociable, to be able to survive in school and when you're peer group. So those are the things. Yep. Making room for baby. I guess a lot of time that we need to know, if especially as parent or when they're going through divorce, when we have a lot of things preoccupied, make sure that you might need the support to make sure that you have room for that.
It's always easy to say all this, especially during the good time. But when during the relationship breakdown, is very often that parents just fight. Maybe they are using the same research, using the same statistics. They just pick and choose the thing that are in their favor and to pursue their case. And that's why we need Robin, the mediator, to help parents to see through all this. And how do you work out that conflicts during the mediation?
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning. So picking up on what Laura has been saying, really important to recognise dads as the first step towards doing inclusive and positive work with dads and with their families, the mums, the children, post-separation. So, why include dads? And there's a lot of research now, again, evidence-based research, that shows us that how positive it is if dads are included in their children's lives. So evidence shows dad's parenting influence is a separate, important factor in childhood, separate from mum. And I've actually had children in child-inclusive, child-informed mediations who've said things like, but dad's hug feels different to mum's hug. And, you know, it is that aspect that they want to have both parents and they want to have the experience of being loved by both of their parents. Dads are generally becoming more involved in parenting. So socially, now dads are becoming much more involved, particularly in the Western countries. I think Asia's a little bit behind where we are in the West, but hopefully getting there. And particularly with COVID, that, you know, many dads were at home, working from home. Many babies were born during COVID, and dads were there to take part of that role. Dads have a strong desire to be fathers and are motivated to be good fathers. So a lot of the research as far back as 2008 was saying when they researched dads, they wanted to be involved and they wanted to be good dads. When dads have positive involvement, this leads to positive impacts, not just on them, but also on mums and kids in their lives. So it's positive for the dads, it's positive for mums, and it's positive for children. The more dads respond to their child's needs, the more they'll be involved in healthy community activities. So what they're saying is involved dads tend to be less about drinking and, you know, going out partying and maybe getting involved in unhealthy activities if they are more connected to their children and want to be home and want to be parents. But the dad's role needs to be clearly defined, even more so in separated families. So one of the things that always surprises me is that when people go into relationships and decide to cohabit or to marry, and then decide to have children, they don't have the conversation about what will our roles look like when we have a child. You know, what will your role be? What will my role be? How will we share roles? Is there any joint parental responsibility? Parents don't have those conversations. And so it's often not until they get to a separation or a divorce and end up in mediation that we encourage them and give them a safe space to be able to have those conversations about what is their role. So let's just move forward. So this is just showing, and I'm not going to go through all of this because we'll run out of time, but this is just the positive involvement of dads in children's lives and how it impacts the whole family. So the outcomes for mum at the top, support through child rearing. They don't have to carry all the load on their own. Support with the schooling and academics, dad being able to go along to meetings and be involved in homework, etc. Helps mums, meaningful interactions with their kids, so they've got more time to do that, etc. And sharing responsibilities for mums. So there's a lot of pressure on mums to be responsible and to take care of the family and children. And then the outcome for kids, that, you know, that good role modelling, emotional well-being that Laura has talked about, that they feel loved, cared for, they have higher self-esteem, confidence if dads are involved as well as mums, positive childhood behaviours, resilience, empathy, cooperation, respect for others, and then academic performance, which I know is very important in Hong Kong. But academic performance and achievement can be enhanced if dads are also involved as well as mums. And then good outcomes, of course, for dads in terms of their own development and feeling worthy as a dad and learning, you know, new skills around parenting and developing positive parenting attitudes. You know, it's not easy being at home with a child. Often we hear dads say, oh, but she does nothing. She just sits at home all day and watches TV or goes out for lunch. No, that's not what it's actually like. And once we get dads involved, it's very quick for them to see that actually it's tough being a parent and that, you know, you're constantly interrupted. It's hard to get things done, etc. So let's just talk about the 7 types of dads. So I think I went to a conference here on the Gold Coast just a couple of weeks ago, and Relationships Australia Victoria have a support for fathers program, and they did a talk, and they clearly defined 7 different roles that dads can have. And I think that, you know, in mediation, we talk about different roles and how can dads be involved with their children, babies all the way through to teenagers, young adults. How can they be involved and at what level? And sometimes it is about defining and for mum to hear the different roles, because often mums only see the dads, particularly in Hong Kong, as being the providing dad, the breadwinner dad, the protector dad, the dad that kind of brings in the income and looks after the family. And often dads, that's a huge responsibility. And often dads don't particularly want that role, but society has pushed them into that role. There's an expectation that they will take on that role. But then there's often an expectation that they won't have all the other roles. But more and more dads want to be the other types of dads. So the responsible dad, you know, that's the dad that's really good at organising things and making appointments and getting kids into extracurricular activities. The nurturing dad, the dad who wants to be involved in changing nappies and feeding their baby, but also wants to be involved in other aspects of caring. The thoughtful dad, that's the dad who's really good at knowing their children. That's the dad who is aware of their child's needs and their challenges and their strengths, and is able to plan for those and build in some support structures for their children. The affectionate dad. So these are the dads who are able to say, I love you, and give their kids a hug and a cuddle and tuck them into bed, and want to do that and want to show their children that it's okay to express feelings and emotions and to reciprocate with those. The interactive dads. So these are often the fun dads. These are the dads who, you know, like to get involved in the play and communicate well with their kids. They often involve their kids in making decisions and deciding what to do on weekends or on time when they have their children. And the sharing dad. So there are dads who want to share responsibility with mums, whether that's when they're together or whether that's post-separation. And post-separation, we need to define how is that going to look so that the dad can still be involved in co-parenting with mum, so children benefit and so everyone benefits. So I think one of the pluses about mediation is that we bring these conversations into the mediation setting so that parents are able to finally have these conversations that they probably never had. They're kind of like the elephants in the room that just sit there and don't get discussed, but we put them on the table and we discuss them, and we help parents to look at what happened in the past is not how it has to be going forward, that you can now decide together, how will this be going forward? Again,
Robert, before we move on, I believe that, well, if you put this slide in front of the high conflict couples, and then all the father will try to tick all the boxes to say that I'm wonderful. But I'm sure the mother will be saying that, no, you are not this, you have not been this and that. So how do you deal with that situation? I believe they will spend an hour to debate.
If you move on a couple of slides, I'll show you how we do it.
Great.
So let's go past that one. Let's go to the next slide.
Is it this one?
So the next 3 slides, I'm going to show you how we do this in mediation. So, and of course, this is a very quick tips of some of the ways we do it. Obviously, there is years of training to do it properly. But one of the things is mediator impartiality, that we don't come with preconceived ideas about who is the primary parent and who should have what time with children. We're not there to be judgmental. And so we are there to try and use the research and use objective criteria to help parents to be able to make these decisions, to look at that previous caretaking history, to look at the child's attachments, to look at bonding, familiarity, sense of security, etc. but then we are there to advocate for children. So we are not there so we are impartial when it comes to parents, but we're not impartial when it comes to children. We have an obligation to ensure children's best interests. So we use a child-focused approach, and high conflict parents are not child-focused. High conflict parents are about themselves and their own needs. So they come into a mediation or probably a solicitor's office, and they're saying things like, I want or I don't want the other parent to have time with the child, or I want, equal time with my child, or I want in Hong Kong, I want to have care and control. In Australia, they might be saying, I want 50-50 time with my child because I have a right as a parent and the other parent's all at fault. So they come in kind of with that adult mindset, and we need to change that and turn it into a conversation about, well, what does your child need? This is not just about what you want. This is about what are your child's needs. So let's just talk about your child for a while. So we focus it back to children. We also do empowerment and self-determination. So we do operate from the principle that we think most parents love their kids. I have had some mediations where neither parent wanted the children, but for the best part, most parents want their kids and love their kids, and they want to do what is in their children's best interests, but most parents don't know what's in their children's best interests. They've never been through a separation or a divorce before. This is probably the hardest time in their life, and they're going through a grieving process, and they need knowledge. They need to be able to make informed decisions, and part of our role as mediators is to do that education and to base it on research. So it's not our view, the mediator's view, it's, what does research say is important for your kids? How can we help give you that information? The other thing, and this goes to your question, Rita, high conflict people, they are operating out of that adult mindset. So if we go to the next slide, can we do that? So when people are together, they have an adult relationship and they have a co-parenting relationship. Then when they separate or divorce, they have a conflicted adult relationship. That's why they're leaving the other person. That's why they're separating. There is no trust. It's quite normal. There is no communication. There's no ability to make decisions. And they have what are called negative attributions about the other parent. So they think negatively that the other person's intentions and behaviours are negative and that they can't do anything appropriate or correct. So they're saying things like, oh, he's irresponsible, she's selfish. So you're hearing all of these personal attributes, but then what they do is they translate those adult ones into the co-parenting. And they say, well, if that's what you like as an adult, then that's what you're going to be like as a parent. And so if I can't trust you as an adult because you've had an affair or if this has happened or whatever, then how can I trust you as a parent? And part of our job as mediators, and I hope other professionals in the area, family law area, is to separate out those roles. That adult relationship is over. They will never rebuild trust as an adult. They'll never learn how to communicate as an adult. But that we can help them to learn how to do these things better going forward as co-parents. So there's a lot of work to be done in shifting, if we can move on to the next slide, in shifting parents' beliefs, perceptions and assumptions. So we need to do what is called cognitive dissonance. We need to change that story that goes around and around and around in their head about the other person and how bad the other person is and how right they are and how good they are, and how the children would suffer if they're with the other parent. We need to change those beliefs and perceptions and assumptions if we're going to change how people behave, because it goes in a circle. We need to change their thought systems so that they can have different feelings towards the other person as a parent, never as an adult. We're never going to change that, but we can change their belief systems about, what their children need, what the other parent can perhaps provide, for their children, and that then hopefully will change some of their behaviour in terms of being willing to co-parent going forward. So if we can move on. So some of the ways we do this is that we don't focus on those positions. We don't listen to, we listen and acknowledge, but then we move on around, I want because I have a right and you're wrong because you did this in the past. We move past that and we focus on, well, okay, I understand all that, but I can't change that. Tell me what your needs are going forward. What do you need as a parent? So when they say, I want sole care and control in Hong Kong of the children, help me understand why you would like sole care and control. What is it about sole care and control that's important to you? Help the other parent to understand. Labels don't help. So we actually don't use labels in mediation. We don't use custody, care and control and access. We talk about sharing responsibilities and sharing time with the parents so that they get used to that language. Because often they will fight over the terminology, but actually they agree on the parenting arrangement, on the caring arrangement for the child. So we need to, change the labels. We need to focus on the child and not what the parents want. And we use that research. So we have a lot of research that we use in mediation to help educate parents to understand the effects of conflict on their children. If they're high conflict parents, they need to know their children are going to suffer and how they're going to suffer, because all the research says it's not a separation or a divorce that will impact negatively on children. It's the ongoing conflict. And there's a lot of research about the effect. And, we need to share that information. We do those charts that I showed you before around risks for children and around appropriate care arrangements, the importance of involvement of children having a relationship with both parents, roles for mums and dads, how can that be sorted out so both parents can be involved, positive effects for children of co-parenting, guidelines. So they need to learn how to communicate as co-parents, how to behave as co-parents, what are appropriate boundaries as co-parents, how can new partners be involved going forward. So all of this needs to be redefined, and mediation is the place to be able to do that, because these are tough conversations and they can't do it on their own. They'll go straight back to the old patterns and the old belief systems and the old behaviours and ways that they had in their adult relationship. Our job is to keep them in that co-parental mindset so that they can actually have these conversations as parents of their children. We also talk about types of time. So in Australia, it's called substantial and significant time. So it's not just equal time. And equal time is a presumption if parents have shared parental responsibility, but it's only equal time if it's reasonably practicable and it's in a child's best interest. So if parents are high conflict, it may not be in that child's best interest to have shared 50-50 time. Significant and substantial time is not big time, it's actually types of time. So it's time on the weekends to have fun, time during the week to do homework with your kids, take them to school, pick them up from school, take them to extracurricular activities. It's time on holidays, to make memories and have that longer quality time with kids. So it's different types of time. So we have to kind of help parents to understand. They don't have to have sole care and control. They don't have to have access. They can actually work out time that works for their children, but also meets parents' needs and children's needs. And styles of co-parenting. So it's not one size fits all. We don't want them to be conflicted co-parents going forward, which high conflict parents like to do. We want them to actually be able to do this in a respectful way, and maybe they need to be doing parallel parenting or two-track parenting, where they kind of parent in their own time and don't criticise the other parent's parenting. and to help them to be realistic that they're not going to be able to do cooperative parenting straight away. Some parents want to come in and do cooperative parenting. They can't go from separating and fighting at that adult level to then being able to cooperate as co-parents. That it's better to do good parallel parenting than bad cooperative parenting. So, you know, sometimes we just need to give parents permission that it's okay to step away from that for a while because maybe it's not realistic, and focus on what you actually can do and do well. So I don't know, does that answer any of that?
Yes, but at the same time, I have more questions in my mind, as always. We've often used, again, terminology. Lawyers like terminology.
Yeah.
I know you hate this terminology, parental alienation.
Okay, so let me just clarify. So parental alienation is different to parental alienation syndrome. So the syndrome was kind of brought about in 1985 by Professor Richard Gardner. And he used that to describe the behaviours of children who he believed had been alienated from a parent. That caused a lot of controversy, and it was not accepted by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And it is, as far as I know, that syndrome is not used in any family court system. But the term, so it's not admissible in court, parental alienation syndrome, but the behaviours of alienating parents and the psychological, emotional and behavioural effects on the targeted parent, the alienated parent, and on the children is admissible. So it's more about focusing on the behaviours than focusing on the label. So one of the problems with using the label parental alienation is that everybody makes assumptions about what that actually means. And it needs to be really clear what that means. And I remember back in 2019, we had a speaker at the Hong Kong Family Law Conference from the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Services from the UK, from CAFCAS. And they have a really helpful tool, assessment tool, that they have developed around how to assess whether children are exhibiting the behaviours of a child who might have been alienated from a parent, and whether the targeted parent is exhibiting the types of behaviours you might expect for a parent who's been alienated, and what are the types of behaviours that an alienating parent might exhibit. So this is a really helpful tool that they kind of have developed. And I think if we're using these types of assessment tools when we're talking about parental alienation, then we're focusing on behaviours, because then we can look at how do we deal with those behaviours going forward? What is the most appropriate arrangement going forward for that child, so that they don't lose a parent, they're not estranged from a parent, and that they can have a relationship with both parents, provided it's safe, again, and that there's not a significant reason for why a child has been or is refusing contact with a parent. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, Laura?
I agree with Robin that it's important to talk about the behavior, because once you can name a behavior, it's more likely that you can change, to help the parent to change as well. And also, when you label someone, people are more reluctant to change, or they become more defensive as well. And it was like, okay, I'm stuck in here for both parents. So I think it's much more healthier for the parents. It's like, well, we see this kind of behavior. How can we address that together?
Yeah.
But it is talking about the treatment stage. But at the heat of the argument, they have conflicting views and different agenda. And I've seen parents, they try to pursue a case on sole custody. They deliberately, they have possibly looked at all the case law and then know under what circumstances sole custody will be awarded. And then they try to make things so difficult in the litigation while you're trying to promote settlement at the mediation, or they have heard the research, but
Yeah.
they've done something else at the litigation.
But then I guess it's for the judge to decide. I was like, well, if you're the one that not allowing the child to have a relationship with the other parent, then should you have more? Yes.
But from my experience, the judges, especially for the first two hearings, they tend to be more conservative.
Yeah,
Because-
they'll err on the side of caution to make sure a child is safe.
Yeah, because they've heard enough criticisms, allegations, complaints about the other parent. And then it depends on the age of the children, then the access to mostly the father will be hugely restricted. So
When it comes to allegation, yes, we have all seen how
to what
parents.
extent that allegation could stand? To what extent do you feel?
Well.
Can I just say, I mediate in the absence of truth. So I think if we're dealing with people who are high conflict and who are doing this type of behaviour, just expect that they're not going to be truthful. And that they're going to use behaviours to manipulate that child to, you know, not have a relationship with the other parent. So, you know, then we have to, unfortunately, the problem then is that you've got to go through the court processes. If you can deal with this in earlier stages in mediation or in some other forum, then that's great. But if you're waiting for this to go through a trial, then the child is caught in this for 1 to 2 years while that goes through to a trial where the judge can actually look at all the behavioural factors and get the reports in from the necessary professionals to be able to then make an informed, you know, judgment around it. We can't do that. We're not there as mediators to collect evidence. We are not decision makers, and we're not there to decide who's right or wrong. We're there to look at the effect it's having on the children and how do we assist the parents to be able to see that their child is suffering because of it and that they both have a role to play in stopping it. So the preferred parent, the person who's doing the alienating, there are ways and things that they need to be doing if they could understand the impact it's having on their child. And the alienated parent also needs to be doing certain things to encourage that relationship and to not pressure the child and push the relationship. So, you know, it's not easy. You're talking about, you know, some of the most difficult cases. And of course, the ones that go to court and litigate are the most difficult cases. They're the ones where you will see this type of, you know, behaviour happening.
Robin, do you want to touch upon the last slide before we go for the Q&A?
This is really just about helping mums to also hear positive messages about dads. That, you know, this is about changing that belief system. And if they can hear some positive messages about dad being involved, then they're more likely to change some of those belief systems and maybe see that their children would benefit from having a relationship and more time with their dad. But sometimes the other thing is dads don't know how to do it, that mediation's an opportunity for positive change. So maybe up until the separation and divorce, dads have been really busy, and now they have time to reevaluate their life and what's important to them, and do they want to continue with this role or do they want to change their role going forward? You know, and mums will say things like, oh, but he doesn't know how to feed the baby, he doesn't know how to settle the baby, he doesn't know the baby's routine, therefore he can't be involved. Of course he can be involved, and mum has a role to play in helping him to understand and know the baby's routine, to write out for him what the baby likes to eat and how often, and, you know, sleep times, etc. all of that can be learned. You know, these are behaviours that can change, and that we need to help parents to understand that this is a positive opportunity and people can benefit from it. It doesn't have to be negative. Everyone who comes into a mediation is in a negative space. They're in that negative intimacy space where they think very negatively about the other parent, and they can't make decisions together. That's why they're at mediation. So we need to kind of help them and show them, okay, there is another way. You actually can do this, and it's better than the risks of going to court often. Maybe there are some goals that can be met through changing your belief systems and learning how to co-parent and being able to share that role and those responsibilities going forward, and letting dads be involved. That, you know, kids can really benefit from having their dads involved on all levels. We just talked about the 7 different types of dads. Look at those 7 ways dads can benefit children.
Thank you, Robin.
Just showing mums that diagram of 7 different roles that dads could take, and asking her, you know, so how do you feel that dad could be involved? Sometimes the visuals speak 1,000 words.
True. We have less than 15 minutes left. So anyone who has questions, please raise it either here in person. And we have 2 questions on our chat box. Maybe can we put it here so that everyone can read? The first question is, would you further elaborate your point why it is hard to develop attachment in supervised access?
Should I go? I think supervised access, for those that have seen it before, you usually have it either having a nanny or a point person being there, or you go to a family center. So you will always have a third person. For the parent, usually the father or sometimes the mother, they do feel like being watched. And the child is there as well. They know that they're being watched as well, whatever they're doing or saying. So it's much harder for it to be spontaneous. And then when you're being watched, you always think like, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I being too rough now in my play? So it's really hard because attachment is, you can't have a script that's like, this is what I'm going to say when the child say that. This is what I'm going to do when the child play this game. It's a lot more spontaneous that happen. When there's someone watching you, probably video recording you as well, it's much harder for it to happen naturally.
Yeah, supervised access should be for safety issues,
Yes.
to ensure a child is safe.
And well, I didn't realize that there are so many questions. So maybe we look at the back. It's different here. And Robin, do you have anything to add? But I think at the same time, why we need supervised access is that we have to also take into account the other parents' concern of the children's safety. So I think it's a matter of stage. We can gradually improve the access arrangements.
And I think a lot of them is the parents. Psychologically, they have to feel safe with the other parent as well, unless there's.
Okay, I'm interested in Jeremy's question. Actually, this is from his daughter. So is it possible for the father to change his relationship to become more involved, or stop doing the strong, unbreakable front of little bit later in the child's development, or will the shift raise difficulties? Well done, Claire.
Okay, that's a great question. And my answer is, it's never too late to change. It's never too late to learn. And I think your daughter would benefit from it. So go ahead and do it.
I don't think she is complaining about Jeremy. And okay, so we go up. Are there questions? Okay, please, would you further? Is it the top? Okay, no. Do the courts in Hong Kong appoint independent children's lawyers in high conflict matters? Yes, we have official solicitor from the Department of Justice. Yeah, I just went to court this morning and the court appointed an official solicitor for the child. So there is, they will write report and then they will just be the voice of the children. I think the custody evaluation is equivalent of a family report writer, family consultant in Australia.
Correct.
We have social welfare report in Hong Kong. Sometimes we also have the psychologist report for the children and even the parties. And I know there is family report in Australia. Robin?
Yes, and I think, you know, we have some of the same issues. In Hong Kong, the social welfare department that does a lot of the welfare reports, the court reports, are Chinese social workers, who do a great job, do their best. But we have a lot of expat families in Hong Kong who then often complain that maybe the Chinese social worker didn't understand culturally some of the aspects of parenting and, you know, what was happening in their family. We have similar issues in Australia, in that we're a very multicultural, you know, society in Australia, and that, you know, often it's difficult to kind of understand every culture and their parenting ways and, you know, what they consider appropriate for discipline, etc. But we do the best we can.
About this report, how about relocation? I think
Relocation?
It is a very important topic. I find relocation cases more unpredictable these days. And I appreciate there will be a huge impact for the relationship between the children and the left behind parents. So how do you deal with these sorts of conflicts?
Okay, so relocation is very binary. You know, people come in to a mediation, it's very black and white. I want to relocate. No, you can't. Well, you can, but the kids can't. So we need to shift that. Again, we're shifting it from the positions into needs. So we're looking at, what does your child need at this stage in their life? And how does that happen if they remain in their current situation, if that's Hong Kong or another city? And how does that happen if they move and relocate somewhere else? The other questions that I always ask parents, which does send them into a bit of cognitive dissonance, is I ask them to think the other way. So if you were to agree to a relocation, which is not what they want, if you consider to agree to it, what would you need to agree? What are your concerns? What needs to be addressed by the other parent for you to consider a relocation? And for the parent who wants to relocate, what do you need to consider the child not relocating? So I try to move it to needs, because that's what we work on in mediation. We don't work on those binary positions because you're just going to reach an impasse and a deadlock. But if you shift it to needs, then we can look at, well, can we address those needs? And, you know, often it's the left behind parent. Their needs will be, how do I maintain a relationship with my child? How can I continue to communicate, you know, on a daily basis? How can I share, you know, appropriate time with my child? And the other parent needs to address that for them. So, you know, or the parent who wants to relocate in Hong Kong, sometimes that's about support from family members if they're expat people. Sometimes it's about finances. They can't afford to stay in Hong Kong and live in Hong Kong. So what do they need to consider to stay in Hong Kong with the child? And can the other parent address those needs sufficiently that they might consider to stay until perhaps developmentally it's appropriate for that child to relocate out of Hong Kong? So, you know, I think for me, if you're going to get an outcome around relocation, you need to shift it away from that positional conversation around, I want to relocate with the kids, no, you can't, to let's talk about the kids' needs and let's talk about your needs.
Laura, do you have anything to add?
Sometimes I would talk to parents like, can you stand from the other parent point of view? How can you reassure the other parent that you will try your best utmost to make sure that the child is able to have a relationship with the child if you're moving away?
Yeah, and that's really difficult, I accept, because there's no trust. And
Yes.
so, you know, sometimes they need time to get to a stage where they actually show that other parent in the place they're currently in, that they can be a co-parent and that they can actually facilitate the other parent's relationship before they can then consider a relocation.
Yes. That's why I say sometimes give them time, that they feel like, yes, if I can't do that right now, if you hardly let me see my child, what's going to happen if you move 12 hours away? So maybe it's time before you consider relocation is start building that trust, that's building the path that you can do that.
Yeah, what do you need to do to reassure the other parent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any questions from those here? No question. Okay, Vivian.
How can, for an older child, how can you help mend the relationship between an older child and a father, where the older child perhaps doesn't want the relationship?
Did you say older child?
Older child. They don't want to have a relationship with the father.
They want a relationship with their father. How do we assist? How can we assist in that?
Okay. So for me, if we're doing any sort of care arrangements for older children, I really think older children should have a voice and should be able to have a say, not to make a decision, definitely not, but to feel that they've had an opportunity to have a say in what they see as their needs and I guess, you know, what they would like to see in terms of relationships with parents going forward. Often it's the children who can actually see the whole picture rather than a parent who only sees their own side. So that's why we do child-informed mediation, child-inclusive mediation, so that we have a child consultant who can actually speak with the child and, you know, find out the child's voice so that that can be heard. If anyone's ever tried to make a teenager do what they don't want to do, you know, there is no point in getting a court order or a mediated agreement if that teenager is dead against doing it. They're not going to do it. They're going to run away. They're going to create, you know, a really tough situation for the parent trying to make them go, the other parent insisting they come, you know. So I think we need to respect our children and let them be empowered. And to feel that they've been listened to and that they've got a voice and that they won't be the people making the decision, but their views will be taken into account by mum and dad.
And what would be the appropriate age for having a child-inclusive mediation?
Okay, so most of the research says 5 years of age is the youngest, but we do include children who are younger if they are part of a sibling group. So we let them come if they're, you know, say 4 years of age. But 5 is, yeah, we do child inclusive with 5-year-olds. We don't interview children. The child consultant does not ask the children a series of questions. It's not a social welfare report. The child consultant is trained to work in mediation and to know how to use a range of projective tools with children. So drawings, paintings, bear cards, sand play, dolls' houses, you know, a whole range of projective tools are used, story stems, where they start a story and the child finishes the story. And through that, the child consultant, who is generally a child psychologist or a counsellor who's trained in children's matters, knows how to interpret the children's messages in a psychosocial developmental context, their age, and be able to deliver those messages in a positive way to the parents so that the parents don't get defensive and so they can hear the messages from their children and hopefully take them into account. But we do a lot of screening and assessing before. We don't take every family into a child inclusive or a child informed mediation, that there are assessment tools we use to make sure that children are not at risk if they say something that a parent doesn't like, and that parents have the capacity to hear the child's voice. If they don't have the capacity and they're not prepared to change their views and their behaviours, there's no point in doing it.
So it means that you're going to assess the parents first.
Yes.
Okay.
So the mediator assesses first and recommends it, and then the child consultant also does an assessment. And if the child consultant deems it not appropriate, it doesn't go ahead. The child consultant has the final say.
So you will definitely work hand in hand with the child psychologist.
Yes. Yeah, hand in hand. Yeah, and you, I would meet with the child consultant prior to a mediation, so I'd know exactly what she's going to say to the parents, how she's going to say it, the themes that she's uncovered from the child, how she's going to back it up with the tools that she's used to show the parents the paintings and to show them, you know, the stones with little faces on it like emojis, and to show the parents the bear cards and to back up what she's saying, and then how she's going to put that into a developmental lens.
Laura, do you have anything to add?
When it comes to an older child, let's say a teenager, sometimes they maybe over time they stop the relationship or they rejected a relationship. A lot of the time I work in kind of family therapy situation. So I would see the teenager, let's say, and try to understand why. The why and all the resentment, how it built up. And I try to build a bridge. And I would let the young person know, it's like, okay, I understand that you might not want to have a relationship with the father, for example, but why? And then maybe this is a chance for you, because I don't want you to carry all this burden with you. Maybe this is a time for you to heal. There's time for you to let the father know why you were so upset to the point that you don't want to have a relationship with him. Whether the parent, the father, able to change. And I think it's give the father a chance to change. Whether the teenager will accept the father or not, it's the teenager choice. But give the father a chance to mend some of his behavior. Sometimes it's just small changes, and sometimes given chance to repair the relationship. That would be for the benefit of the young person, rather than carrying all this burden and resentment.
Yeah. Can I say it's not always the father?
Yes, sometimes it's the mother. Sorry, that's the question. Yeah, because sometimes it could be the mother, sometimes it could be a grandparent. But I think is all the relationship carry certain baggage, but give the young person a chance to repair those relationships, because that changed the lens of the young person see the world as well and relationship.
Okay, so thank you so much, Laura, Robin, for sharing your experience and insights on the psychological impact of the children. I think we do have a duty to protect the children. They are the most vulnerable group during the relationship breakdown. And not only the psychologist, the mediator, we as a lawyer. I think what we heard from Russell Coleman at the Bangkok conference, we have to be very careful in the words that we use in litigation, because it has quite a big impact on the relationship. So thank you once again for everyone's joining us, and I hope you find this useful. What conference is the IAFL Bangkok conference? And so
International Family Law Conference.
Yeah. So
the next one next year will be in Brisbane for those in Australia.
I think in February, and then December 2025 will be in Hong Kong. So I'm promoting IAFL. Yes, so thank you so much. If you have friends who you think you will be interested in the topic of today, we will upload the video, the recordings on our website, and then do feel free to ask us for any information. We'll be happy to help. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So let's have a drink.
Wish we could join.
We'll treat you another nice drink when you are here.
Yeah, next time I'm in Hong Kong.
When are you coming to Hong Kong?
Back in October and back again in December.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few months away.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Robin, for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Rita.
Thank
And thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.